you can describe them as, or you can define them as, they are the sterile solutions. Okay, so the word sterile is very, very important. So they are the sterile solutions. No other preparation except for ophthalmic. Okay, ophthalmic preparations are also sterile in nature. Okay, except for ophthalmic and parental preparations. Okay, no other preparations are sterile in nature. So they are sterile. They may be in the form of solutions, or sometimes they may be in the form of the suspensions also. So they are sterile solutions or suspensions, and they may be containing near one or more active ingredient. This one or more active ingredient we write in every formulation. So they are sterile preparations. Parental preparations are also known as injectables. Okay, so they are sterile in nature. They may be in the solution form, or they may be in the suspension form. They may be containing one ingredient, active ingredient, or they may be containing more active ingredient. Okay, and these active ingredients are present in either aqueous vehicle, or they may be present in oily vehicles. Okay, so the vehicles that are used may be aqueous or oily in nature, and they are introduced inside the body. So they go inside the body by the means of injection, like tablet, like capsule. They go by the oral route, whereas these parenteral products are going to go inside the body with the help of an injection or infusion, or in the form of implantation. So when you inject something, when you infuse something, or when you implant something under the body, okay, under the skin, okay, it may be under one or more layers of the skin or the mucous membrane. So when you do this, and that preparation is known as parenteral preparation. So the important words are sterile. Okay, they are in the form of solution or suspension. They may contain one or more active ingredient. They are aqueous or oily vehicles. They may contain aqueous or oily vehicles, and they are introduced inside the body with the help of injection, infusion, or implantation, and they penetrate and they are given through inside one or more layers of skin or mucous membrane. So this is the definition of parenteral preparation. Now, parenteral, this word is derived from two words, that is para, which means enteron. Okay, that is besides the intestine. Okay, so para is one word which means besides. Okay, and enteron means intestine. So it is paraenteron. So from paraenteron, the word has been derived as parenteral. So these two words combine your word as parenteral, and these two words, that is paraenteron, it means besides the intestine. So any drug that is given beside, this was the earlier definition. Please try to understand. Okay, now there are many other what you call that preparations which are given besides the intestine. For example, you have sublingual, you have through buccal patches. Okay, then you have transdermal skin, transdermal patches. Okay, so they are also given beside the intestine. But earlier on, this definition was given. That is the drugs that are the formulation that is given beside the intestine. Okay, those are nothing but parenteral, because they are given under the skin in the form of an injection. Okay, so this is how the word parenteral has been devised. Now what are these dosage forms? They are injected directly into the body tissue, right? So what they do is they pass the primary protective system. Okay, which is the primary protective system of the human body? That is the skin, and the mucous membrane. So these are the two primary what you call that protective system of the body: skin and mucous membrane. What does your dosage form do? Your dosage form passes these two and go directly into the body tissue. And that is the reason why, as it is passing this primary protective system, that is the reason why it should be very, very sterile in nature. If it is not sterile in nature, then it is going to affect a lot to your human body. Okay, so you are giving microorganisms inside the human body. So instead of treating the disease, you are going to what? You are going to cause the harm to the patient. Okay. Hence, they should be in the most pure form, and they should be free from any physical, chemical, or biological, that is the microorganism contaminants. So they should be very, very pure in the terms of physical, chemical, and biological. Okay. Now, hence in industry, there are two practices, that is current GMP, that is current good manufacturing practices, and good aseptic practices should be followed when you are manufacturing the parental dosage form. Okay, and administering it to the patient. Okay, this is something about the parental preparations. Let us move ahead to the types of injectables or types of parental preparations. So, you have in the form of solution. Okay, example is codeine phosphate injection or insulin injection. They can be in the form of sterile solids. They can be in the form of dry solids. Okay, or they can be in the form of liquid concentrate that does not contain the diluent. Okay, so they can be in the form of sterile solids also, and they can be in the form of dry solids also, right? And what we have to do is we have to add some solutions into. Hello, we have to add some solutions into it. Okay, and then we have to dilute it, and then we have to give it to the patient, right? Example is ampicillin sodium. Okay, then the next, so maybe, so they may be in the form of dry solid, do not containing not containing diluent, or they may be in the form of dry solids containing the diluents. Okay, now these are usually referred as active ingredient for injection. For example, let us take the example of methicillin sodium. Okay, so methicillin sodium you are going to not call as methicillin sodium injection, but you are going to call them as so when you see this word, they can be in the form of dry powders, they can be in the form of emulsions, they can be in the form of sterile suspensions. Okay, we can give them in the form of transfusion fluid. Okay, they can be in the form of ophthalmic preparation, they can be in the form of implants, or they can be in the form of freeze dried products. Okay, so these are the various types of injections that are available. Single dose in it. For example, ampules. Okay, take out all the ingredients and give it to the patient. So it is in the form of single dose unit, right? For example, ampules are there, infusions are there, or you also have predisposable syringes. So you have a syringe, okay, and inside that syringe, what is given is the medicine is already present inside the syringe. Okay, so inside the syringe, the medicine is already been present. So these are known as predisposable syringe. You just have to open it, give it to the patient, and the syringe you have to discard. You don't have to use the if you are giving the form of ampules, then what you have to do is you have to take the ampule, you have to cut the ampule, then you have to take another syringe, you have to fill the syringe with the drug, and then you have to give it to the patient. Okay, so these are some of the examples of single dose unit: ampule, infusions, predisposable syringes. Okay, you can based on the number of doses, they can also be classified as multiple dose unit. Okay, for example, there are large volume parentals, okay, which contains near about 500 ml, and it is to be given to the patient. Or sometimes what is there, you have the vial, and from this vial what you do is, from this vial you take out the medicine, you give it to the patient, and when it comes another patient, you again remove the medicine from this vial, you again give it to the patient, or and the third time again the next patient come, again you remove from this vial and you give it to the patient. So this is nothing but the number of doses you can give it. Okay, number of doses, that is single dose unit, or you can have a multiple doses. It can be classified on the basis of quantity. Okay, whereby you have SVP, that is small volume parentals, or you can call them as LVP, that is large volume parentals. So small volume parentals has the and 100 ml. It can be classified based on number of quantity, that is small volume parenteral and large volume parenteral. It can be classified based on the clinical use, okay, how you are using it. So it can be classified as a solution for irrigation, ophthalmic solution, dialysis solution, diagnostic agent, allergenic extracts, or in the form of implants, right? Okay, so where it is being used. So if it is used for dialysis, then you are going to call we are going to call it as dialysis solution. If it is used for diagnostic, then diagnostic agents. Okay, if you are implanting it, then implant agent. Then if it is used to detect allergies, then you are going to call it allergenic extracts. Or you are going to if you are putting it into your eyes, then ophthalmic solution. Or if you are used for washing or cleaning a particular organ, then it's known for solution for irrigation. It can be classified on the based on the clinical needs. It also can be classified based on the physical state of the product. Okay, so you can classify them as solutions, you can classify them as suspensions, emulsions, and solids. Okay, so based upon these four classes, you can classify your parental products. So the first advantage is the acid liable drug, okay, which get inactivated if the drug is given by oral route. Then these drugs can be easily administered to the parental route. So the acid liable drugs are being saved if you are giving it by parental route, because your drug is not coming in the contact with the stomach acid. So acid liable drugs which are getting inactivated by oral route can be easily given by the parental route. Okay. Then the second thing is the patient who are vomiting, okay, or they are suffering, or the unconscious patient, okay, such kind of a patients who cannot be given the drugs by oral route, you can give them through the parenteral routes. The most important is the drug action is quick and rapid. The bioavailability of the drug is 100%, and it is reaching the site very quickly and rapidly. So these types of preparations are very useful in case of emergency solution. Okay. Now drug action, this you can also prolong the drug action if you want by modifying the formulation. So if you modify the formulation, then the drug actions can be prolonged. Okay. Then it provides continuous amount of needed medication. Just for an example, if you are giving a large volume parenteral, in case of a large volume parenteral, the medication is provided continuously. You are giving in the form of drip to the patient, so the drug can be provided continuously. Also, in case of implants, the drug can be provided continuously to the patient if needed for a longer period of time. Also, we can adjust the infusion rates, can be adjusted so that more or less amount of medication can be given to the patient as the situation demands. Okay, so that can also be done. Then, as I told you earlier, bioavailability is the highest. Okay, in case of parenteral preparation, it is having the highest bioavailability, and it provides higher concentration of drug to the bloodstream, because there is no first pass metabolism, FPM. Okay, first pass metabolism is totally avoided by this drug. Acid degradation is totally avoided. Okay, and the drug is given to the right side, hence the bioavailability is near about 100%. There is no wastage of drug. So these are some of the advantages. That is, the acid liable drugs can be given. The drug can be the parenteral preparations can be given to the vomiting and unconscious patient. It can be given in emergency situation. You can have prolonged action by modifying the formulation. You can give the medication continuously to the patient in the form of drip. This infusion rate of the drip can be adjusted by giving more or less medication, okay, as the situation demands. And the what you call that, the availability of the drug is 100%. So these are some of the advantages. There are some of the disadvantages also of parenteral preparation. Okay, these disadvantages include that if you once inject, then it cannot be removed from the body. Okay, it cannot be retrieved from the body. It cannot be removed from the body. Whereas if you give it in the form of oral preparation, what you can do is you can if the drug has been given, if you feel that the drug is wrong, then you can give them emetic, whereby the person vomits off the total content that is gone inside the stomach. Okay, so that is possible. But in case of injectable, that is not possible. You cannot, once given, you cannot withdraw it. Okay. The second most important point is the injection that may cause pain at the site of action. Okay, so it is painful in nature. The next important factor is the trained person is required for giving that preparation. Whereas in case of oral preparation, you yourself can take it, isn't it? You don't require a nurse or you don't require a doctor in order to give the preparation. Now, if it is given by wrong route, it has to be given by IV route, but you have given by intramuscular route, IM route. Okay, then it is going to cause an adverse effect, right? So the route also should be proper. Next is, it is difficult to save patient if there is a overdose, as it cannot be retreated. Okay, hence it is very difficult if the patient is given the overdose. The next important disadvantage is the sensitivity or allergic reaction at the site of action. Okay, so many patients have sensitivity or allergic reaction once you inject an injection at the site of action, right? Another important disadvantage is that the preparation should be sterile and pyrogen free. So the production has to be done very, very carefully, and it has to be it has to be preserved also very carefully, so that the preparation remain totally sterile in nature, right? And also there are skin changes, okay, with the long-term use. Just for example, if you take insulin injection, etc., whereby you have to take the preparation every day, okay, then it is going to have the skin changes, right? So these are some of the disadvantages of your parenteral preparation. Now let us move ahead. What are the different routes by which the parenteral preparations can be given? So the parenteral preparations can be given by intravenous. The dermis of the skin. So here it has been shown. Here you can see different routes by which it can be given. So this is intravenous route, where it is given inside the vein. You have the intradermal route over here, if you see, where it is given below the skin layer, that inside the dermis of the skin, right? In the dermis layer of the skin, it is given over here. You can have subcutaneous route, where it is given in the subcutaneous tissue, right? Then you have interthecal route, okay, it is known as IT. The interthecal route is given in the subarachnoid space of the spinal cord, so it is given in the spinal cord. You have epidural, okay, it is given in the epidural space of the spinal cord. So these two preparations are given inside the spinal cord. Then you have an intra-arterial route, whereby it is given inside the artery. You have intra-articular, so intra-arterial and intra-articular. So intra-articular, it is given in the joint spaces. You can have intracardiac route, where the injection is where the parenteral preparation is given the heart. Okay, you can have intraocular route also, whereby the drug is given inside the eye. Okay, and you have intraperitoneal route, whereby it is given inside the peritoneal cavity. So you have a peritoneal cavity which is surrounding the stomach area. So inside this cavity, inside the peritoneal cavity, that is known as the intraperitoneal cavity. So it can be given inside the peritoneal cavity also. So these are the various routes. Okay, that is intravenous, intramuscular, intradermal, subcutaneous, intrathecal, epidural, intraarterial, intraarticular, intracardiac, intraocular, and intraperitoneal. Okay, so these are the various routes by which your preparation can be given to the patient. Let us move ahead. Now, what are the various pre-formulation factors that you are going to consider, right? Now, whenever you are giving a preparation, okay, if you talk about parenteral preparation, then the first thing that you want is, you want the therapeutic effect in the patient. isn't it? If I'm giving a preparation, then what I want that it should show a therapeutic action inside a patient. The second thing that I'm looking for is from my formulation. So when I'm preparing the formulation, what I'm looking for first is the therapeutic effect inside a patient. I cannot prepare a very good formulation, and if it is not giving any therapeutic effect to the patient, then it is of no use. The second thing that I'm going to see when I'm going to prepare a formulation is the convenience, okay, acceptability, and the effectiveness of the product. So these are the three things I look from a formulation. In the sense of therapeutic efficacy. So the patient. Whenever if you bring sterile dry powders, okay, if I am not able to prepare a sterile liquid preparation, if I am able to prepare a sterile liquid parenteral preparation, I am talking about, okay, this I am talking about the parenteral preparation. So if I'm able to prepare a stable liquid preparation, then I'm not going to go for dry powders. Okay, dry powders I'm only going to formulate it if I'm not able to prepare a stable liquid preparation. Right? That is the third important thing that I have to remember. Now, another important thing is that if I am using two or more ingredients inside a parenteral preparation, then I have to see to it that they do not cause adverse interactions. So they do not interact with each other. So that is another important pre-formulation consideration that I'm going to do. That is the drug incompatibility. So these two drugs should not be incompatible with each other. At the same time, I should see the drug. If I'm using diluent, as I've said earlier, if I'm using diluent along with the drug, then I have to see that there is no drug excipient incompatibility also. Also, the drug should be stable. I have to also see that the drug is stable with the vehicle. Usually the vehicle is water. If it is not stable in water, then I'm going to go for oil. Okay. If oil, it is very viscous in nature, and if you are using oil, then the other problem that the oil is having, it is quite painful to give oil to the patient because it cannot be easily given through the syringes. Okay. So if I find that, then what I can do is I can go for preparation of sterile dry powders, like you do for antibiotics usually. In case of antibiotics, you usually give them in the form of sterile dry powders. Okay. So you have to carefully evaluate if there is no drug interaction between the two drugs, or there is no drug excipient interaction, as well as there is no drug vehicle, okay, interaction that is causing. If the drug vehicle interaction has been caused, then I am going to go for preparation of the dry powders. Also, one has to remember that the pre-formulation information that is obtained is usually quite meager. It is quite less. Okay, hence one has to go for what you call that, his own experience, expertise, etc. when he is formulating a pre-formulation preparation. Usually the pre-formulation factors that are considered when you are going for parenteral preparations are the same one we have already talked about. The pre-formulation factors earlier in our first chapter. We are going to study the solubility aspect of it. We are going to study the melting point of the drug. We are going to study the polymorphism of the drug. We are going to study about the surface characteristics of the drug. We are going to talk about the hygroscopicity, whether it is hygroscopic in nature. We are going to talk about the partition coefficient. Find out. We are going to find out dissolution. we are going to find out the bulk density, and also we are going to find out the wetting property of the drug. So these are the different pre-formulation factors that we are going to consider. If you see your Latchman, then it talks about the 3-4 important pre-formulation factors. It talks about he says that molecular weight, then solubility, purity, colligative properties, okay, and chemical reactives are very important. Okay, so these all you know. You know what is molecular weight, you know what is solubility, you know what is purity, okay, of the drug, you know what is chemical reactivity. Now what is colligative properties? Okay, these are the properties of solution, okay, that depends on the ratio number of okay, कि कितने solute particles है to the number of the solvent, okay, molecules in the solution, right? And some of the properties, colligative properties are what? Vapor pressure. This is one of the colligative property. The another colligative property is your boiling point, freezing point, and osmotic pressure. This you must have studied in detail. Talking about the pre-formulation factors, I said these are the pre-formulation factors that you have to do. Along with that, you know, the molecular weight, the purity, the chemical reactivity, and the vapor pressure, boiling point, freezing point, and osmotic pressure. These are also very important factors of the drug molecule that you have to consider when you are doing the pre-formulation study of that particular drug that is to be formulated into an injectable. Okay. Now let us move ahead with the general requirements of the parenteral preparation. Okay, whenever you are preparing a parenteral preparation, what you look for is 3-4 important things. One thing that you look for is the stability of the parenteral preparation. This is not only true for parenteral preparation, but stability is very important for any formulation that you prepare. Even if when you prepare the capsule formulation, if you prepare the semi-solid preparation, if you are preparing a tablet, or any formulation that you prepare, it should be stable up to the time of expiry of that product. Okay, stable means what? Whatever the drug is been given to you, you have a drug X. This drug X should not be converted to drug X1. Okay, if I am giving 100% of the drug, then this 100% of the drug should remain as such 100%, okay, till the time of expiry. Means supposing the expiry is for 2 years, then for these 2 years the drug X should remain as drug X only, and it should not be converted to drug X and X1. Let us assume that there is some drug that is converted to drug X1. Okay, we have a drug that is converted to drug X1, then it is very important to study the impurity profiling is very important. Just for example, you have given 100% of the drug, and after some, say after 1 year, the expiry is actually 2 years, but after 1 year, this drug is 99% retained. Just for an example, okay. But 1% of the drug, as it has undergone chemical reaction, and it has converted into some other substances, that is drug X1. It has converted it to X1. Now, one will say that okay, it is 99% pure, no problem. Okay, what is the problem? The drug is 99% pure, so it is going to show the X. Also, it is very important, the drug, the component X1. If the component X1 is toxic in nature, okay, if it is having some adverse reaction, okay, then can this be given to the patient? No, it cannot be given to the patient. Though 99% of the drug is remaining pure, okay, but that 1% impurity is what is toxic, or that 1% impurity is what having adverse reaction. So in that case, what happening is the stability is getting lost. So when we are saying that the drug is not stable, or the formulation is not stable, and when this can happen, the drug as such may remain stable for a longer period of time. But many a times when you convert this drug into a formulation, right, in that case what you are going to add, you are adding many other excipients into it, right? In case of parenteral, you are adding water. In case of parenteral, you are adding oils to it. In some case, you are going to add diluents. Okay. In case of tablets, you add number of excipients. In case of capsule, you are adding number of excipients. So the drug as such is stable. But when you are preparing a formulation, there are chances, as the drug is coming in contact with many other substances, okay, as the drug is coming in contact with many other substances, hence the drug may lose is that some part of the drug may be unstable. Okay, let us say 1% has become unstable. Okay, and that 1% may be toxic in nature, may be having adverse effect. Hence, the stability profiling, studying the stability profiling is very, very important. Okay, of the preparation. Right? Got it? Okay. So the first thing that is required from the formulation that you are preparing, general requirement is the stability of the preparation. The second thing is the sterility. Okay. Parenteral preparations needs to be sterile in nature. It should be free from pyrogen, and also it should be free from the foreign particles. Right. So your preparation should be pyrogen free. It should be free from any foreign particle. It should be free from any biological contaminants. Okay, so it should be totally sterile in nature. That is another important requirement that is required from the parenteral preparation. Okay, which is not required from many other formulation. The another important thing that is required from the parenteral formulation is the isotonicity. Isotonicity, again, we are going to talk in detail. But if the product is not isotonic in nature, then what is going to happen? It is definitely going to cause pain. Plus, it is going to either cause the bulging of the cells. Okay, if your cell is small, then it may cause bulging of the cell, or it may also cause the shrinkage of the cell. So, bulging or shrinkage of the cell is possible if your blood cells I'm talking about. Okay, will be there, because your parenteral preparation is going to come in contact with the as it is giving inside. Supposing if it is intravenous in nature, then it's going to come in contact with your blood cells, right? So, or cells it is coming in contact with, what is this going to cause? If it is non-isotonic, then it is either going to cause the bulging, or it is also going, or it may cause the shrinkage of the cell. Okay, hence this preparation should be isotonic in nature. The parenteral preparation should be isotonic in nature. Another general requirement that is required from the parenteral preparation is the purity of it. Okay, it should be chemically very, very pure, right? Because the drug again is given inside the system, right? So the impurity profiling, so as I tell, if it is not pure, and if there is 1% impurity that is present, and if that 1% impurity is toxic in nature, then what is going to happen? Then it is going to have a very adverse effect inside your body, right? Because in case of tablets also, it should be pure. It should not have any toxic impurity. But in case of tablet, you have one, you have the first pass metabolism, whereby the liver may take care of that drug. But in case of your parenteral preparation, the preparation is directly given inside the vein. So this toxic impurity may be very, very harmful to your patient. Hence, this preparation should be very, very pure in nature. So the general requirement of the parenteral, some of the general requirements of the parenteral formulations are: it should be stable in nature, the parenteral formulation should be sterile, it should be free from pyrogen, it should be free from foreign particles. This parenteral preparation should be isotonic in nature. If not isotonic, then it is either going to cause shrinkage, or it is going to cause bulging of the cell, and further to bulging, it may also cause the breakage of the cells. Okay, and it also should be chemically very, very pure. So these are some of the requirements of the parenteral